what's alive in me now? What am I experiencing now? What do I need to pay attention to or turn my heart toward at this moment in time? I use my journal every day that way. And I don't write what I know, I write to discover. I assume that if I simply sit and be with the journal and don't edit what comes out onto the page, fascinating things show up. It's like, wow, did I write that?
It's thrilling to be an interviewer. You get to look closely and listen to people's ideas and gain insight into the choices they have made. My next guest is truly innovative. She lives her own life according to what works for her. She's a prolific writer, beloved poet, and creative thinker. Minx Boren returns to our show with a new book and some more insights into growing older.
You are watching ProfondeTV with host Phyllis Haynes.
Minx, it's a pleasure to talk with you. It seems like a long time. I've missed your poetry. I've missed your thoughts. What's on your mind these days?
Oh, there's so much on my mind these days. These are really interesting times. But if I had to say where I would begin, it has to do with being an elder, stepping into these elder years powerfully and with curiosity. That's what I've been up to a lot ever since I published my book and then did some speaking about it and then got involved in Elders Action Network. I have been very much in the conversation of being an elder and not being either marginalized or in some way distanced from what's going on in the world. I want to be front and center, and I want all elders to be front and center and engaged.
Well, do you think that the world can accept elders being up in center and engaged? I mean, it seems like there's so much criticism. There's even a book called Okay, Boomer. You know, is it reasonable for elders to be at the forefront?
I don't know that I mean at the forefront as much as I mean participating fully. So there are so many young groups, activist groups that are powerful and beautiful. I was just on a call with one group of people, and what we're looking to do as elders is we've got years of experience and lots to offer and lots of wisdom and lots of talents and gifts. And we want to be able to continue to contribute.
Well, that's rare. That's exciting that you found this group, and you've got a fantastic book called Decades. What's the book about, and what are you talking about? Is it just a capture of the decades, or where are you going with it?
So it's actually called Decades of Gratitude, Gusto, Grit, and Grace. And those are my 4, what I would call compass points for growing older, to do it with gratitude, to remember to be grateful every day for what is available, what I have experienced, with gusto, to hold on to my enthusiasm and back burner my skepticism when it's there, with grit when it's needed, because it takes a lot of grit to stay on course, to keep involved, to not be marginalized, and with grace, which is for me grace in both directions, being in a space to receive grace and also being graceful in the way we do things. So that's my book.
Well, let's talk about the grit part. I mean, this is it takes a lot of grit. You know, there are all kinds of quotes about what it takes to grow older. You know, it just is not. It's not an easy thing to do, and not everyone is able to deal with it so well. So first of all, I want to know your secrets for doing it well, but what you would say generally to people about the grit that they need.
So to answer the first part of your inquiry first,
Mhm.
this has been a lifelong journey for me. You and I know each other a very long time. And back in my 20s and 30s, I was already campaigning for healthy food, healthy habits, healthy exercise, making a commitment to always consider self-care in every choice that I make. So that goes way back. And I think if the looking ahead, I remember when I was exercising in my 20s and people say, you work out so hard, but you're already in great shape. Why are you bothering? And I would say, because when I get to be 75, I don't want to have to make up for lost time. And now I'm 75. So there's a lot to be said for staying the course for all these years. That doesn't mean that you cannot reverse certain poor habits or things that you didn't attend to earlier. It just, what's alive in me now? What am I experiencing now? What do I need to pay attention to or turn my heart toward at this moment in time? I use my journal every day that way. And I don't write what I know, I write to discover. I assume that if I simply sit and be with the journal and don't edit what comes out onto the page, fascinating things show up. It's like, wow, did I write that? This means it's a bit easier if you're asking for my secret. It's just, I've stuck with it. If you're asking for about other people, grit is one, it's very personal. We need to dig deep. We need to have strong enough values and an important enough sense of purpose and meaning in life that makes us want to stick with things. And the other piece that I will say with absolute certainty is that we need to be able to not do it alone. Community matters. None of us are wise enough or strong enough on our own.
Well, we're dealing with a pandemic right now, so the community concept is a little difficult to navigate for a lot of people.
There's
How have you been able to connect with your community?
there's a yes and no to that. I would say I am in connection either by phone or very often by Zoom calls pretty much daily. I'm involved in a half a dozen important, or for me, meaningful organizations, communities. I have something called a Soul Lab. We've been together for 15 years. We're all over the country. So we have always met by Zoom or phone. I'm involved with a group of master coaches, and we call ourselves a BSSer group, Blue Sky Society group. We're all in Florida. I'm involved in conscious sustainable living programs. The list goes on. I could just sit here and list all the ways that I am involved. Recently, at the request of somebody here, we have a Norton sculpture garden. And because people, olders were feeling isolated, we created Zoom conversations about what gives us strength, what gives us purpose, what makes us feel like we belong. And we actually attracted 50 or more people onto those calls, olders who wanted to be in the conversation.
So we'll list some of those things at the end of this discussion so that people can reach out. But I think a secret to or a part of your response is that in some ways the isolation has created an opportunity for connection. I mean, you don't have to get on an airplane now to get to all of these communities. You can find something operating on a network, on a digital network that you can connect to. So in a way, I suspect you can experience purpose and meaning without having to fly all over. I mean, I know you used to fly all over and probably will go back to that, but I think there may be an opportunity in this. You've got a new business around this too. Can you talk about what you're going to be doing for people? I find it's very interesting.
So if you go way back in my life to when I was, even before I was a teenager, I was a journal keeper. I wrote in a journal pretty much every day. It was a way I could process what was going on in my life. It was a way I could find answers that didn't come to me in other ways because I would be quiet. So I have journals that go back to certainly when I was 9, 10, 11, and I still have them, and all the years since then. Journaling eventually led to, I've written or co-authored 16 different books now, and poetry books as well. And I've also used it as a way to, what I like to say, I teach journaling courses, to discover oneself on the page. It's not to write down, though that's also valuable, but it's not to write down in a calendar style, this is what I did at 10 o'clock this morning. It's to look at what's alive in me now. What am I experiencing now? What do I need to pay attention to or turn my heart toward at this moment in time? I use my journal every day that way. And I don't write what I know, I write to discover. I assume that if I simply sit and be with the journal and don't edit what comes out onto the page, fascinating things show up. It's like, wow, did I write that? And then every year I go back to what I wrote exactly a year ago to see where I was then and where I am now. Am I still muddling around in the same issues? Sometimes yes. Have I moved on or found solutions or found ways to be with whatever was so at that time? Sometimes yes. It's a way to actually be reverent, pay attention to and be reverent about my own life and where I've been, where I might yet be going, what might show up that I didn't know. I'll very often end a journal, a time on my journal, by asking a question, like what now, what next, and then leaving it and then picking it up the next day, because I write before I go to sleep very often, and I seed my dreams with questions. And then I wake up in the morning and I grab my journal and I go sit outside at sunrise and write what's alive. What am I waking up with? What's on my mind now?
Well, how are you going to bring this to others?
I bring it to others. I've been bringing it to others for many years. I teach here at FAU Lifelong Learning. I teach at spas and wellness centers. And now I'm launching a business with a longtime business partner. Years ago, we created something called Empower Parties to bring people together. So she had trademarked Purpose Journey, which is her business, and also Purpose Journals, which is something that we're now involved in together. So I'm helping to write the prompts. I'm the what do we call me? COJ, Chief Journaling Officer, CJO. I love that. And I'm offering webinars on keeping a journal. I'm writing prompts that you can get from our website, which are, so there's a gallery, because all of the journals are created by artists, the covers, so they're exquisite. And then you can choose journal prompts depending on what it is that you want to focus on. We also have a community. So you join a community and then you get into conversations with other people in the community about how they're using their journal. So it's, once again, it's another way to create community.
And you might even have some specific topics that everybody can journal on. Is that ever going to happen?
People can come together because they have a common interest, like being an elder would be a common interest for me right now, or becoming more and more health-wise, because our decisions really do matter. So what are we doing, and sharing our best practices and writing about how we're feeling as we're doing it. So being a witness to our own experience and then sharing that, or sharing about the things that are making us really sad and depleted, because we're all dealing with so much more stress than we know how to handle. This is a stressful and difficult world right now. And one of the ways we navigate our way through it is really in community. None of us is wise enough alone, and none of us is strong enough alone.
Well, community, you know, Minx, you always have this very positive view of the world, but I want to take care of the rest of the cynics out there. Community can be also problematic. I mean, you know, some people like to be alone. They don't want to be bothered. You know, I tend to be a loner a lot on occasion. So, I mean, you put up with this with me and our friendship. I'm not one that you talk to a lot on the telephone because I don't like to talk on the telephone. So, um, when you say community, can you manage community in a way that you can be in it and not under it?
First of all, community is anything from you and one other person
Mm-hmm.
to you and myself and the sometimes 100 people who are on a call. For example, for Elders Stand for Fair Elections, there can be 100 or 200 of us on a call, and we still create community. There are ways to do that using Zoom and breakout sessions and opportunities for interaction and connection afterwards. You pick and choose what's important and what's your own personal balance between isolation and overwhelm. We all have one. If
Balance
I'm
between isolation, say that line again. You choose between isolation and what?
isolation and the overwhelm of being inundated by way too many people way too much of the time. In coaching, we have something called boundaries, and we all need to set them in terms of how many and how often we will allow people into our lives, and it's different for each one.
Well, let's give people a sample of your process because you have some magnificent poetry. You and I have always talked about aging in slightly different ways, so I love hearing your take on the subject. So let's see what you have about being an elder and a poem that you'd like to share with people.
Okay. I love this. And this is recently written. I spent last year, I think it was, based on Parker Palmer's book, which is On the Brink of Everything, which I loved. He had the challenge of writing every day. And so I took it on. So last year I wrote a poem every single day for the entire year just to see, well, could I do that? What would happen? Didn't have to be good. It just had to be on the page. So this was actually poem number 26. It was early in the year. These are the joys of the elder years. Time to reflect, time to connect, time for stillness, time to kick back and relax and to ease on down the road, and time perhaps to indulge in grand excursions and to marvel at the world. And yet, these are the times when the struggles of the world become more and more our struggles, when the daunting vista of all that has been or might be destroyed muddles the once clear path to a better future that works for everyone. How devastating to know that there may no longer be enough time to right the wrongs that are piling up, along with the never-ending garbage and plastic debris that are polluting our world and our bodies. And yet, what is mine to do is to not despair, to not succumb to dismay, to not indulge in grief or anger, to continue to choose joy and hope at every turn and bump in the road, to navigate faithfully toward a future worth passing on to those who are coming up behind us. You were right, Mother Teresa, in reminding us that we cannot do great things, but rather only small things with as much love and courage and joy as we can muster. May that be my mantra. May that be my guiding star. And may that be the drumbeat to which I march now.
Mm. That's just a taste of your exquisite writing, Minx. I really thank you for that. And I think that helping people to get into your process with you is quite a generous thing to offer, a business built around supporting others doing journaling. So let's talk a little bit more about your daily practice. We weren't going to talk about food in this program, but I think we have a little bit more time. So talk a little bit about your self-care, if that's what's on your plate for you. What is it that you do for self-care now? Not just what you did in the past, but what do you do now?
So the first thing that I need to say is I have recently been through a challenging time, both for myself and for my husband. And so wellness is front and center. And I also want to say that sometimes when I share what I do, it feels overwhelming to people, but we all start somewhere. And as I said much earlier on, I've been doing this for a very long time. So the cornerstones of my practice is I get enough sleep. I get 8.5 or 9 hours sleep every night, lights out at the same time every night, because that serves me. And I know how I spiral down if I'm not sleeping well or sleeping long enough. And there are things you can do if you're not sleeping well to learn how to. Remember, my background is in health and nutrition. So that's one piece. I sleep well. I eat really well. I've eaten really well for a long time now. Without going into it, it's changed through the years because my body's changed through the years. What I needed to eat when I was 25 and a marathon runner is not what serves me now at 75. So I've had to learn to listen really carefully to my body. I have a very strong spiritual practice, which includes journaling, but I meditate every day. I also do, for those who know what it is, I do tapping every day. So I tap on various points in my body every day and do affirmations and declarations while I'm doing that. When I find it, we know it calms your nervous system. We know it reduces cortisol. So I do that daily. And I exercise for at least 2 hours a day. 1 hour is something like yoga or Pilates, and one is either spin or walking. I walk with a weighted vest now because I want to be sure to keep my bones strong as I grow older. So those are the cornerstones. There's more, but and it's different for everyone. Tell me what you love. Find a walking partner or find a good book that you like to listen to if you're going to go walking. Find something that serves you that will help to get you out the door. When I was running marathons many years ago, I was listening to Winds of War and Remembrance, which at that time were tapes. So I had to carry a tape recorder to listen to them. The books were over 75 tapes, so I carried 2 or 3 in a backpack at a time. And when I ran out of tapes to listen to, I ran home.
And now it's so easy. You can have right on your phone right now. You can have books on your phone. I don't get the control of the remote in my house, so I tend to look at a movie when I'm on my spin bike. All the things I can't see normally. Perfect. So that's a very satisfying thing. But you can also get fulfillment by serving others. I mean, there are friends of mine who work in food kitchens or help out and help disadvantaged children in some way. I mean, there are lots of good projects out there to engage oneself, and I know you do a lot of things like that too.
I do. I sit on the board of the Women's Foundation in Florida. Since there was a board, that goes back a long way, and we support mostly youngers. We have a Girls Leadership Institute, lots of things. So I'm out there working with them all the time. I also sit on the Leadership Council of Elders Action Network on the other end of the spectrum. And I'm out there doing lectures on food and wellness. And I'm teaching at Lifelong Learning. It's a very long list of the things that I'm involved in, but they give me great pleasure. They don't feel like I should be doing this. I very carefully discerned the things that bring me joy and that where my gifts and talents, my values are a good fit, because none of us can do all of it.
Well, you bring me a lot of joy, Minx, and I thank you for the time and only a glimpse into your very incredible life. The book is called Decades, and we'll show the book.
Oh, sure, Decades.
No, you don't have to show it. I'll show it. Don't worry. I'll put it up on the screen. I'll take an image of it.
I love that book. So that book is all my lessons. They came out of my journal. It's all things that I learned along the way, observations I made. That's why I love sharing it.
Your pleasure. Thank you so much, Minx Boren.
Thank you.